Hi everybody in TV land. I don't know whether you can see us yet, whether the tap's been switched on, but we're just going to introduce ourselves in a second. Wait till the throng has assembled, and then we'll kick off. So, my name's St. John Walker. I'm Deputy Dean of Escape Studios, and this panel is Animation Online on Time. And essentially, what we're talking about now is very pertinent, I think, particularly to the kind of online world we now all seem to be inhabiting. So long before COVID, online animation training courses were booming. But is there a real choice of how to learn the art remotely? Or is it all bouncing balls and facial gestures and exercises? Does it rely on having expensive kit at home? What's it like learning on a course at your own pace as opposed to attending a physical class? We've got together here virtually today some of the various trainers, teachers, educators within the realm of animation, all coming from very different perspectives. So it's a great panel we've got here who are going to talk about, you know, animation online, how to get the most out of it, maybe how to navigate to good sources of training, because there's a lot of things out there at the moment. And I'd like to introduce them right now. So I'm going to ask them all to just say a bit about themselves and maybe show something, and then we'll start with some questions, and I will then field questions from the audience as well. So we've got here today, we've got Alex Williams, who's the head of animation and also Animation Apprentice, beg pardon, who's going to talk about what he does. We've got Peter J. Kemp from 3D AMI. We've got Hugo Guerra from Hugo's Desk. We've got Tom Box, co-founder of Blue Zoo, but also AnimDojo, Axis VFX, and multiple other training and education interests. And I'm going to ask Alex, first of all, to tell us a bit about yourself and what you do, and maybe show some work. Thank you. We can't hear you, Alex. It's the age-old mute question.
Sorry about that. Apologies. So thank you for the introduction. My name is Alex Williams. I'm the head of animation at Escape Studios, and I also run the online school Animation Apprentice, which I set up in 2012. So that was 8 years ago. And at the time, I guess online training was still relatively new, but I was by no means the first of the animation schools. Obviously, there's Animation Mentor, there was iAnimate, I believe, had been set up before me. So there was a bunch of places that had already started getting into that frame. But I think for me, it was really just about realizing that, you know, you didn't necessarily need to go and learn in a bricks and mortar school, and you could do the same thing online, and it would be a lot cheaper for the students, and also a lot more efficient because you don't have to keep giving the lecture over and over again. So I adopted it long ago. Actually, back in 2012, I was working for Escape Studios, teaching animation in the classroom there, and I was trying to persuade the then head of Escape, Dominic Davenport, that what he really wanted to do was set up an online animation course. And he said, no, 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 they had other things to do. So, so really, I set up my school because Escape Studios didn't want it. So I thought, well, I'm gonna have to go and do it myself. So I did. And it is, you know, I still love teaching in the classroom, but I also love teaching online. And I think the two are highly complementary, and both systems work for different people. So why don't here's a blog. I'm slightly obsessed with blogging. I blog constantly. I blog about my students' work. I blog about what's going on, the latest news. Here's one of my students who just got a job. So I like to say, yay, Bella got a job. And then another one just a couple of days ago released an animated ebook, which is another really interesting thing that people are doing. You know, students are publishing their own books and animating them. And then there's some stuff on demo reels and all of that kind of thing. And you can see all the demo reels from recent years here. I'll just play one. It's a couple of minutes long.
Alex, we can't see the screen at the moment.
Oh, good point. Sorry, I'm not sharing my screen. I feel like I should be.
We've all been there, don't worry.
I know, it's very frustrating. Sorry. Let me see if I can find the app and share my screen. Yes. Apologies for that. Yes, so here's the animation blog. So I blog constantly about animation, also at Escape Studios, but also at Animation Apprentice, about all the stuff people have been doing. So let me just click on the demo reel and see if I can play this.
I am taking them to imprison them in prison. I picked this guy up a while back for petty theft. Code name. Outlaw name. Relax. Let's pull down the code. It's not that weird.
Great, so that's a recent reel. Let me see if I can get out of screen sharing. Yeah, so, you know, I mean, it's funny, isn't it? Because after doing this stuff for 8 years, online training feels like old news now. It did feel exciting and inventive and new in 2012, but now it's just part of the landscape of learning. And obviously there are lots of great schools, and mine is just one among many. But I think it's great. I mean, students can learn online, they can learn in the classroom, and it's whatever suits the individual, I think. So why don't I let you, Saint, why don't you let you hand on to someone else?
Great, thanks, Alex. And, you know, it's great to see some of those core skills coming out in there, because we may actually cover that, you know, what are the actual core skills of animation these days online, and how difficult it is to maybe, you know, teach some of them online. But let's not go there right at this moment, because I'd like to now introduce Peter J. Kemp, who runs 3D AMI. And he's going to talk a bit about what he does, and maybe show some imagery as well. Thank you, Peter. Your mic.
Hello. Okay, hope you can hear me. So yes, I started off as a secondary school teacher many years ago, I think about 2005. And I had lots of students who wanted to get into 3D animation. These were students in secondary schools between 11 and 16 years old. So I ended up founding an organization called 3D AMI. And 3D AMI takes students through the whole process of creating their own online film together in a group of 7 students, sorry, in a group of 9 students in 7 days. And we've been running events with University College London since 2012, on site there, giving them access to lots of compute power, and meeting every summer, making lots and lots of films. And this year we actually shifted this whole filmmaking studio online. So we had students from all over the UK making films together using Microsoft Teams, which was a little bit chaotic because we've got a team of 9 and they're all sharing the same hard disk space, so people might be overwriting other people's work, and you might find that some computers are faster than others, and you're spending 5 hours rendering a short clip on one computer, which will take 20 seconds on another computer. So all sorts of technical issues, but actually the students came together over the course of 10 days this summer with support from the Animation Council and Screen Skills to actually make their own films. And these are students who were between the ages of 13 and 18. So I'm going to very quickly show you one of these films and just talk a little bit about that process. So let's see if I can get my screen sharing working. Okay, so you should be able to see this and hopefully hear this. I'm going to make this bigger as well. And this is a film, I say, which was made by the students this summer. There are some rough parts to it, but this is what happens when you make a film in 10 days. And also this is what happens if you make a film with a bunch of students, many of whom haven't done much animation before. So yes, that is a film put together by our students this summer. And so many of them had never had any formal education. In fact, I think none of them had had any formal education in computer graphics before. This was all learnt by doing tutorials online and then also working online. And part of what we've also tried to work on over the last couple of years is actually putting together, so let's just shrink this down a bit, putting together resources to get children learning from almost primary school. So we've been working with the Blender Foundation to put together resources to get kids making 3D animations from the age of about 10, 11 onwards. Okay, thank you.
Great, thanks. And maybe we'll get on to questions about what themes young people like to sort of have in their animations, because that was fascinating, the kind of little narrative there. But we're going to move now to a very different area with Hugo Guerra, whom a lot of people will know from Hugo's Desk. Hugo's been sort of very prominent especially in visual effects and training through a whole variety of platforms. So I'm going to let him talk a bit about himself and what he does.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Saint. And also, of course, thank you so much to the festival for inviting me and for Saint to invite me. It's great to be here and to talk about this great topic. So I brought a little, I'll just share my screen real quick so that I can just show you some slides of what I do. And so I'll start there. I promise it won't take too long. Hopefully you can see my screen now. So as Saint said, I do a lot of different things, but mostly I have a YouTube channel called Hugo's Desk. My name is Hugo Guerra. I am a director and a visual effects supervisor. So, and basically I am from Portugal. I'm Portuguese. I came to, I'm actually from Porto, more specifically. Came to London about 15 years ago, and I have worked with a lot of different companies in London. I was for a long time at Nexus for at least 2 years. I was at the Mill as the head of compositing and VFX supervisor for 5 years. I was then a director at Fire.Smoke. I was a supervisor at Sony PlayStation in San Diego. And currently, I am a director at Rebellion Games. So I do a lot of visual effects, like Saint said, but I also work a lot on the video games industry. These are some of the clients that I've worked for in the past few years. I've been working for almost 20 years now. God, I'm old. But anyway, I have a different background. I have a film background and a live action background. So I've been most of my career on set, supervising, and most of my career working as a visual effects supervisor or as a compositor, as a lead compositor. Currently, because I'm a director, I'm much more involved on animation these days. So these are some of the games that I've now been working on, either cinematics or in-game cinematics. On a lot of them, I've been the animation director, but also the film director of the project as well. Obviously, I can't put all of the games I've done because I'm still working on them, and games usually take years for them to be visible. One thing that happened to me was that I have been working remotely since I left the Mill. So this thing with the remote work for me is nothing new. I've been working remotely for 6 years now, and most of these trailers and cinematics were done remotely with large teams working remotely as well. I also have a second life. I've been a teacher for a long time, both on online, but also physically. And I completely agree with what Alex said. There is like a physicality of teaching that shouldn't go away, but both of them complement each other so much. It is great to do both things. And so I've been a teacher at Scape. I've done stuff for the Foundry, for So Editors, for Campus Site Well, for years, for FX PhD. So you can see it's a mixture of physical places and also virtual places as well. I've presented and done a lot of workshops in different festivals as well. This year, of course, all these festivals were online, and none of them were actually physical. If you want to check my work, you just go to my website. It's hugo-guerra.com. You can see some of the trailers and some of the films and some of the projects that I've worked. I run a YouTube channel. So my YouTube channel is mostly about visual effects. It's mostly about quality control, reviewing. It's about lighting. It's about photography. It's about compositing. There's a lot of showreel reviews there as well. And so, yeah, just go to YouTube, Hugo's Desk. That's my channel. I also have a lot of core skills those videos, like how to prepare a show reel. You know, I do a lot of those kind of streams. What kind of books you should be kind of checking on visual effects. Just have a look on my channel. I also have a second YouTube channel, which is called Hugo's Desk Live. This channel is a bit different from the other one. On this one, I have bespoke videos, but on this one, I actually have, you know, only my streams. So because I do a lot of streams live on Twitch and on YouTube, so I put my full streams, and obviously these are the unedited streams that I publish here if anyone wants to check them, where we have a lot of Q&As, we talk with the audience, we talk with a lot of people. If you want to check what I've been doing lately, just go and visit me on Twitter. I'm Hugo C. Guerra on Twitter. And yeah, and I think that's it. I'm going to stop sharing now. That's pretty much me in a nutshell. Thank you so much for inviting me again.
Thanks. And, you know, that's a relatively new phenomenon, that whole sort of streaming through Twitch thing as well. So another opportunity for lots of people to learn stuff. Now going to move over to Tom Box, co-founder of Blue Zoo, and a guy with many fingers in many pies. So I'll hand over to you, Tom.
Cheers, Saint. I'll just give sharing my screen a go. Hopefully it all works. So yeah, so I'm co-founder of Blue Zoo Animation Studio, and we're a animation studio well, we did have all of our staff in London, but obviously now they're very spread out. I think we've got about 350 staff at the moment, I think, spread out around now kind of 14, 15 different countries. And we make a kind of a combination of TV shows, like we're currently making more Paddington and Number Blocks. And we also do short form work, including kind of adverts for people like Pokemon, and we also make our own short films. But we do that, we're kind of really think a lot about how we can be more inclusive and help kind of grow our industry in a positive way. And which one of the ways to do that is through training. So spend a lot of my time trying to work out how to make things more accessible. And part of that is developing AnimDojo, which we started a few years ago, which is really, it's a low-cost animation learning platform that's career focused, which is about kind of like focusing on using real world examples and feedback from professionals in a way that is accessible to as many people as possible. So that's free at the moment. Whilst lockdown, we decided to make it all free, and then it's on a little bit of a break, and then in the new year we're kind of rebooting it based on some of the things we've learned as well, because all these things are a constantly evolving process, and you've got to learn from what works and doesn't work. So we're currently kind of making tweaks behind the scenes to reboot that next year. So I wanted also to show you, because one of the issues with online learning is how you can collaborate with people remotely. And in Blue Zoo, every year we take on interns to give undergraduates especially a taste of what it's like to work in a studio. And we were determined this year to keep doing that. And so we ended up having 8 remote interns working in our studio remotely, and they collaborated with artists in our studio to make a short film. So I wanted to show that film to show that it is entirely possible to learn and be kind of mentored remotely in a studio, and just COVID doesn't mean the end of learning in studios. So hopefully this plays okay. So that was directed by one of our full-time animators after we had a competition internally to pitch an idea. And I think the theme was puberty we had. Then everyone in our studio voted on the idea. And then some of our artists then collaborated with 8 interns to make that during July and August, I think it was. And there we go. So that's the result.
Thanks very much, Tom. And I think, you know, that question of the COVID question is going to come up again and again of, you know, how we're all pivoting and how we're all being resilient and flexible under the crazy kind of last 6 months or so that we've had. I've noticed that I'm going to kick off with the questions now. And the first question is a kind of curious one before maybe we talk a bit about the some nuts and bolts or meat and potatoes. And that is, you know, none of you need to do this. You know, you've all got, in Tom's case, you've got a company to look after. You know, you've all got other jobs. So why did you decide to share your knowledge online and get involved with training? Who wants to go first? Hand up, Hugo.
I promise I'll be quick. So for me personally, you know, and yes, you're right. We're all very busy and we have our own companies and our jobs, and it's sometimes very difficult to synchronize. I'll tell you that, to synchronize all these streams and all these trainings. But I personally feel a responsibility to do it. And I think most of the other people that I talk to, that's really what they tell me as well. I think there's a responsibility as seniors and seasoned people on the industry to try to pass on our knowledge to other people in the industry so they can evolve. In a way, I'm kind of feeling like I'm trying to teach everything that I was not taught when I was younger, you know, because when I was younger, there was no one there for me. And I was in Portugal. Portugal has a very small industry, and everyone was very focused on hiding their information so that no one could swap, like no one could be passed by them, you know. There was a lot of protecting of their knowledge, and only really when I came to London that opened up, you know, where people here are much more sharing, and this industry is so much more adult, you know. And so I think it's a responsibility of every senior and every person that has a good position on the industry to try positively teach and enforce and bring people up below them, because in a way, I wish to be an industry where everyone around me is better than me and not just like me or worse. You know, I want us to create amazing content and not just doing it for my own sake and my own career, so that we can all create amazing content. And I must say, Tom, like that short was incredible. Congratulations. That was an incredible achievement you've done there. So yeah, I'll leave the rest of the audience to you, to the rest of the panel, but that's my take on it.
Thanks. And Tom, you kind of mentioned why, in a way, why you're interested in it, and you mentioned inclusion. Do you want to talk a bit more about that, and maybe about Axis VFX as well?
Sure. I mean, I think one of the reasons why we're why we put so much time and effort into it, because it's all part and parcel of the same issue, I think, in terms of a business of animation. And that's something as a company at Blue Zoo, we're really conscious about and want to use our platform, our resources to help, because ultimately it's kind of, I guess, sorry, you can probably hear my kids shouting in the background. So it's lost my line of thought now. What it is we want to use our business to really help others and help our business at the same time. Because I think in society, if you can try and steer your company to a place where you align your business goals with more societal goals, such as inclusion, then we can actually use a business problem to solve a societal problem. And so at Blue Zoo, we're currently going through the B Corp validation process, which kind of rubber stamps your credentials in that sense, and really makes you make your company that it's not just about a profit line, and that profit line is being used in a positive way. So when it comes to why we're doing it, obviously we have a business problem where we've got these projects and we want to find amazing artists, but we always struggle. It's really hard to hire people at the level you need them to create kind of like world-class projects, and it's hard to do that. So if we need to kind of help more people get up to that level, if we can do it in an inclusive boosting diversity way, then we're actually solving a societal problem and making our industry more inclusive, which is kind of demonstrated for everyone on this panel how, you know, that we need to make it more inclusive and diverse. So we're doing that. So if we can take that business problem and approach it with the society in a way that benefits society, then that's a win-win for everyone. Otherwise, it's just being purely philanthropic, which where the money will run out eventually. So we're trying to do it in a sustainable way, I guess. And that same thing with Access VFX.
Yeah, thank you. And we may well return to that subject of diversity as well in a short while. I'm going to move to Alex now. Alex, you've worked on some amazing feature films in the past. You didn't have to get into teaching or training. So what drives you?
I think for me, it was just, I just really enjoyed it. I mean, when I first moved to Los Angeles in 1996, I started teaching at Cal Arts. And it's true. I mean, there's not a lot of money in it. I remember the head of Cal Arts saying, "What we pay you will barely pay the gas to drive up to Valencia." And he was right. It didn't really, but it was fun to do, you know, and the students were great. And I mean, Cal Arts is such a special place. They have the most outrageously kind of creative, you know, the students are literally drawing on the walls. So they would whitewash the walls at the beginning of every semester. And then you could just do whatever you want to do, just draw on the walls, go crazy, do whatever. And it's, you know, in a way, you know, most schools aren't like that, right? Certainly where I went to university, I don't know about you, but if you started drawing on the walls, that was a pretty good way to end your educational career. But Cal Arts loved it, and they got amazing talent out of that place. And so for me, it was just about wanting to do it. And also, by the time I set up Animation Apprentice, I kind of had the school in my head. It was sort of like wanting to write a novel. You know, it's like you shouldn't write it, you shouldn't do these things unless you already kind of know what it is you're trying to do before you do it. And so I just had this course in my head. And also it was getting fed up with teaching the same thing in the classroom over and over again. It's like, okay, we're gonna do the fundamentals of the bouncing ball again, right? Okay, if I just put this on a video, then I don't have to do it every time. So there was part of that. And then now, of course, I still teach the bouncing ball in the classroom, and that's fine. But if someone falls behind or they're late or the dog ate their homework or whatever, you just say, well, here's the video. You just catch up, you know, in your own time. And we have pretty much, and as you know, at Escape, we do the same thing. We have it's pretty much a video for everything now, except, you know, this some student will always come to you and say, I'm animating a seal balancing a ball on its nose, and then an elephant walks in, and then there's a flock of pigeons. Have you got a tutorial for that? Why not? Why, in fact, why don't you have a tutorial for that? And then I go over and I think, okay, man, I need to animate a seal balancing a ball on its nose. Why haven't I done that already? So I think it's just about making the experience better, trying to make the experience as good for the students as you possibly can. And there's so much you can do. I think we just scratched the surface of it now so far. But I think, you know, you've got a great panel here, and I love what all the other folks here are doing. It's just amazing what you guys are doing. So
thanks. And I'm going to pass over to Peter now, because Peter, you said you were a teacher. You know, were you sort of motivated by a particular philosophy of teaching? What drove you to this area?
So a little bit controversially, part of the reason that I've been trying to get more students involved with 3D animation is to dissuade them from doing 3D animation. It costs a lot of money to go and study this at university, and to if you're looking at your options when you get to the age of 18 about what you're going to do with your life, you think, oh, actually making films and making games, that sounds really exciting. And it is really exciting, but you need to be making an informed choice. So what we have been trying to do is to give more students the experience so they can say, actually, I really like this, but I want to go and do something else with my life. And there's a big kind of vein of democratizing art here. That this is an art form that everyone, you know, is consuming day in, day out, everywhere, and it's got such an impact on the way that we see the world and the way we see each other. But if we don't understand how it's made, then, you know, we can't be as critical with our view of it. So from a kind of educational perspective, we're trying to discourage students and encourage students, and we're also trying to, you know, make this a lot more democratic. And that's why we are making free resources, and that's why all our summer camps are always free, because we want as many people to take part as possible. And the move online this year has been really interesting, because we've had students from parts of the country that we've never had students from before. Normally it's run in London, but by being online, anybody in the whole country can take part. And that's been, there are barriers to that, but that has been quite exciting to see a much more diverse range of students taking part. Thank you. And we may get back to that question of quality shortly, of
But I wanted to ask first of all a bit about sort of how people find you, because you're out there on the internet. It's very difficult to sort of navigate. I think I did a search for animation training and I got something like 130 million pages or hits. So it's not always easy. So how do people find you, and have you got any tips for marketing? If somebody out there wants to, share their knowledge and organize training, not necessarily to rival you, but just they have something to offer. So how do people find you, and how do you market yourselves? And over to you, Tom, first.
The way we've done it, I think it ties into the quality thing, where we've generally relied on recommendations and word of mouth. I'm not a fan of chasing people around the internet, by storing their cookies and stuff like that and harassing them until they give in to signing up. So I'm much more a fan of being authentic, and I think that's the same way that most people who gain momentum on channels do that is by being, not trying to be fake and trying to pretend something else, because you'll get caught out, much same as going to an industry with someone else's show, or you're going to get caught out and it'll be a waste of time. So I think it's just a case of it's you need that quality there in the first place, and then if you believe in it, it sounds cheap, but if you believe in it and put the effort in to build up that online presence, then if you're authentic, then you'll gain that momentum if what you're teaching works, I think.
Thanks. And Hugo.
Yeah, so this is a very, very big topic personally for me, and I think there is actually a problem at the moment, especially with the advent of when we started when the pandemic hit and we were all home and there was like a lockdown. A lot of people flocked to YouTube and to Vimeo to make training, and a lot of people that are not qualified at all are training. And of course, I'm not going to point any fingers. I'm not going to specifically tell anyone, but obviously there is a lot of bad content out there with a lot of bad information, wrong stuff being taught on quite large channels, even on YouTube. And my advice to everyone here, to everyone watching, is that if you cannot find the person online, if you cannot find some work that the person has done, either on LinkedIn or either on Internet Movie Database, then that's a really bad sign. If you're listening to someone teaching you, you want to know that at least he's a teacher and it's taught somewhere else. Or if anything, if it's on this industry, usually you want to make sure they at least have worked on something. But obviously I've met a lot of good teachers that have never worked in production. That is not really the qualifying factor, but at least that you can find out that he's taught on other schools and taught on other universities, and he has some kind of background on teaching at all. If you cannot find any information about the person, then for me, it's a red flag, and you just need to be careful. And I'm saying this is very common sense for us because we've been on the industry for so long, but a lot of very young people cannot notice the difference. They will watch a video on YouTube, and if the video has like 2,000 or 3,000 views or 4,000 views, they'll think it's a good video, because it's so easy for you to buy video views. Anyone can go to a website and buy 10,000 views or 20,000 views. You can even buy subscribers. There's several companies out there selling that, so that the online presence makes it look like it's better. So that's a problem right now, I think. Obviously, it's very difficult to solve because policing it, it's impossible. So I think the person itself has to be the one doing the policing. Try to research your tutor and reach out to him. Usually on YouTube, you have an email, you can talk to the person first. And it's really, I think, information, and of course, maybe talk with other people to see if they have experience with this tutor, or if this tutor is actually backed up by actual, hard facts, and not just someone that showed up on YouTube out of the blue and doesn't really, and is just imitating someone else's tutorial.
Yeah, thanks, Alex. I know that your animation blog is hugely popular and comes up very high in the rankings on Google. How do you market yourself, or does word of mouth, is that the main motivator?
I think a lot of it is word of mouth, personal recommendations. But yes, I suppose part of the reason why I started blogging was, well, it serves a number of functions. It's mainly a teaching function, to be honest. There's a lot of content there. How to animate a blink, why characters blink when they turn their heads, or the stuff that comes up, right? You can walk into any animation classroom in the world and the students will do everyone's doing the same things wrong. And there's a list of about 50 things that everybody does. You know, why walk cycles are floaty, you know, all this stuff. So you can put all of these things up at the blog and you can record a bunch of videos about them, but it also serves the function of promoting the course and attracting hits. So yes, it does have a marketing function as well. But I would say, I mean, the thing with finding a decent course, it's always been the same, hasn't it? Just do your homework. I mean, you know, a demo reel will tell you pretty much all you need to know about whether somebody's capable or not. You can tell but then, you know, there's still people signing up for courses in the university in the UK where the demo reels, I mean, make me wince, and yet they still have students. So either people are not looking closely or they just don't care, or maybe they just don't know.
Caveat emptor, as they say.
Indeed, absolutely, caveat emptor, as we lawyers say.
Peter, you know, as far as I know, you haven't worked at high echelons within the animation industry yourself, but clearly you have a reputation. How do you market what you do?
Oh, absolutely not. I am the odd one out here. I haven't worked on any big films. I've watched some films, but you know, I'm coming at this more from an educational perspective. And actually, the tutorials that we produce are very focused on a much younger age group. So that makes us stand out because we have tutorials which are no more than a maximum of about 3.5, 4 minutes long. So we don't want to give much cognitive load to anybody who's watching it. And, you know, we're going for a much younger group, or, you know, maybe older people who are, you know, struggling to break through that 15-minute video on the interface of Maya or something. That shouldn't really be how you start, we think. The way we're advertising is, I suppose, much the same. It's word of mouth. You know, we do a lot of word of mouth advertising, and most of the students coming to us come through recommendations from their teachers or from their peer group or from maybe clubs that they're involved with and so on like that.
Great, thanks. So, you know, you've all got a huge amount of experience of teaching online. I'd like to ask you, sort of, again, going back to the current situation, or the situation for the last 6 months, about what you've learned about teaching sort of at scale online. Have you had to change the way you teach because, I don't know, a different clientele are now involved, or because of attention spans, or just because you've accelerated your online activities? Has there been any lessons you've learned about teaching and the way you do it from this particular period? Anybody want to talk to that? Nobody wants to talk. Oh, Tom, thank you.
I'll jump in there. I think one of the things we've learned the most is that how vital and how much mentoring works, because everyone's so different. And that's one of the things, like when doing AnimDojo, that we found is, I think we've wanted to help so many people. We've tried to cater for all different types of learning styles. And then you end up kind of like falling between the gaps and not helping people as much as you kind of like as you want to. So part of it is down to, I think, being able to focus on different learning styles and not trying to, you know, not trying to tick every single box, because you'll end up kind of being the master of none. So I feel like it's been that kind of balance of trying to kind of get that balance between guiding people quite open and freely, and giving people that autonomy, and then hand-holding them, which is a very hard way, because some people are really good at just getting their head stuck in and going towards the goal they need to get to. But then other people aren't sure, and they'll keep on kind of going off on tangents if they have a mind that, you know, likes shiny objects, shiny new objects. So I think it's trying to find what works for the right person, and really kind of focusing on how to help that. And we found having that kind of one-on-one mentoring is one of the best ways of doing that with a professional who knows it, who knows the knowledge, not just the skill, but it's, you know, that knowledge of how the industry works, how projects works, how pipelines work. Because if you just know the skills, it doesn't really mean anything in terms of going into the industry and getting a job.
Anybody else want to talk to that question of like how you might have changed the way you teach in the last few months based on COVID and people's attention spans, etc. I'm going to ask Hugo, I'm going to force Hugo to sort of say, have you changed the format? Have you tried out new platforms or anything that works better over the last few months?
I'm sorry, Sant, I wasn't checking, I wasn't jumping in because I haven't really, to be honest, changed anything, because I've been teaching online for years now, and the pandemic hasn't really changed anything. I've just continued doing streaming and doing YouTube and doing my online classes. I also have private classes, and I have like a private course that I've sold on Kickstarter. So it hasn't really affected me much. It's been affecting more my students where they are home, you know, now, instead of being working or trying to get a job. So it's been much more difficult for them to get a job than anything else. But in terms of what I do, really, it hasn't really changed. I guess I can talk about why, kind of like, you know, how this is kind of set up. The reason I started doing on Twitch, for example, because Twitch is really not a platform well known for teaching. It's mostly well known for gaming and things like that. Reason why I did that is because I started noticing that on Twitch, there is like an enormous amount of people doing art, but on Photoshop, and doing painting and doing actual physical painting as well. There's a bunch of people streaming themselves, painting oil canvases and painting drawings and making manga magazines. There's people doing sculpting. So there's a enormous creative side of Twitch. And so that's why I started tapping into it about 3 years ago. These days, there's a lot of people on Twitch doing modeling mostly. There's a lot of games people modeling on ZBrush, doing a lot of Modo, doing a lot of Unreal as well. And I'm doing compositing and also showreel reviews on Twitch. And so I think the reason why I chose a platform like that, and even YouTube Live as well, is because of the community-centric side, that is why I personally don't really like that much the Zoom side of things, because Zoom does not have the capability of having a chat going, and also the quality of the stream is not as high. So I love the streaming platforms like YouTube Live and Twitch because of that. The quality of the video is amazing. You know, it's like you can do up to 4K, or you can do HD at 60 frames per second. It looks marvelous because it has like a delay of like 10 seconds or something. And so it has time to catch up. And then you have like a chat room, and the chat room is really the most powerful part for me, I think, where you have this enormous community. You see people coming in every time. Every day they come back, and they come back week after week, and you start knowing them, you start learning them, you start kind of doing networking with them and talking privately as well. And that sense of community sometimes is a bit lost when you do streamings on, you know, closed streaming applications, or even Zoom, or even I'll give an example. Like a few weeks ago, the View conference was running for the first time online, and it was a shame. They had no chat room. You know, there was no chat room, so we were watching all the talks on a vacuum. We were just watching it alone. I was kind of feeling so alone. I was watching the talk, and I was like, oh, is there anyone else watching? I don't even know. And that's the sense of community, which our young people are so good at that, you know, because of social media. Like if you talk with 18 people, people from 18 years old or 17 or 16, they know exactly this. You know, they've watched Twitch for years now. And I feel our community doesn't tap into that. They are a bit more shy in that sense with social media. They're a bit more shy with the chat rooms. And I can understand it's a bit overwhelming, but it is so powerful. You can really influence a lot of people there, and you can really help people choosing careers. You know, sometimes on Twitch, not just on my channel, but on other people's channels, like Andrew Ogston, and like there's a bunch of people doing amazing streams on Twitch. There's sometimes some Q&A sessions and some talks, and sometimes other artists come into their streams and chat as well. And the amount of information you get from like pipelines at MPC, you know, pipelines at ILM, and how do they do animation here, and how it's amazing. It's like gold, you know, you get so much information just from the chat of these people because they know so much people. There's so many people that come into their streams. So I highly recommend the industry to look into more open public forums with public chat rooms, you know. Yeah, that would be I guess it's not a new thing for me, because I've been doing it for 3 years, but I hope more people can join me with that, you know.
Great, thanks. So on that matter of sort of the social side of learning, you know, which, you know, online can be very isolating, if you don't have those facilities. Peter, you know, you've worked in workshops, in classes, and been very much involved with people in a room, if you like, and now you're doing lots more work online. How do the young people sort of cope with the isolation, or do they naturally form sort of social groups, or do you provide a kind of a social platform for them to talk?
So we were using mostly Microsoft Teams, and the interesting thing was the work didn't stop at 5:30 each night. Sometimes it went on till 10 a.m. 10 p.m. and then started earlier than 9 a.m. in the morning. So there were lots of kind of background conversations going on this. There was a constant stream of chat conversations with memes being exchanged with individuals and people editing each other's work and giving people feedback. So the online platform was really good for that, and maintaining the conversation when in the past they might have been sat at a computer desk and working on that desk until there was a meeting, and then they'd get off the desk, have a meeting, and then go back, sit at the desk again. So it was allowing them to more freely, I suppose, communicate with each other. But at the same time, we were implementing little ice-breaking exercises to get to know each other. We were encouraging them to talk to each other, and talking about what else is different. We had a lot more interactions with industry professionals, because getting them along to a physical event is quite difficult, and you've got to then get everyone out from what they're doing. But we would have people just signing in for half an hour. They come along for half an hour. Students would then kind of pile into this online room to go and meet them, or one or two students would go in at a time, and it just allowed us to meet a lot of industry professionals, get that mentoring happening, which probably would have been a lot more difficult to organise, or wouldn't have happened at all if it was in a physical environment.
Great, thanks. Alex, I know sort of Escape have been using Discord, which was traditionally a sort of a games platform, but it's worked very well for, providing that social background to some courses. One might see some previous courses as being almost like correspondence schools, in the sense that you do your exercise and then you hand it in, the tutor has a look at it and then sends it back online, and there's very little interaction with other people. How have you made sort of teaching more social or interactive, so different students can work together?
So for me, the platform and like Hugo, because I've been doing this for so long, the switch to online wasn't really a big deal at all. But the platform I've always used is Facebook. It's just really, really good. It supports video very well. It supports chat. Everybody's on it anyway. The only trick with Facebook is it does mean if you're using it as a professional platform, as I do, I have to keep it very clean in terms of what I post there. But I find that's a good thing. No one wants to know my opinions on Donald Trump or Hillary Clinton anyway. So actually, if I just steer clear of all the nonsense and just use it for animation, which is what I do, it actually is very useful. And so that's the platform that I still prefer. It just works really, really well. I have the best developers. It's free. It's really easy to use, and that's the one we use. So that is the interactive bit. Because everyone's commenting. I mean, in actual fact, one of the tricks of teaching is to get students used to the idea of not just taking feedback, but also how to give it. Because you're going to be sitting in an animation studio, hopefully, if we ever go back to work, and someone's going to say, "What do you think of my shot?" And you can't just say "cool" or "don't know." You've got to be able to give people feedback, because they want to know, is it ready to go to the director? Do I take a chance on showing this, or is there stuff I need to do? So helping people to develop the confidence and get their eye in and learn how to help each other, that's a really big deal. And that is more of a challenge with online in some ways.
Thanks. Yeah, go on, Tom.
Can I chip in on that? I was just going to say, because I think I think one of the things that is a combination, I think both those questions in terms of what's changed is like Hugo saying, there's this like saturation of streamers, and one of the problems of that is people just watch that, but there's that risk that they're not actually doing it. And you can watch football every weekend, not going to make you an amazing footballer, but it's about practicing. And I think there's a you need that feedback, the streamers that do give feedback, but it's about setting up those challenges to make sure that they're relevant to the real world. And that's one of the reasons we set up AnimDojo, because there are some great courses out there for doing kind of feature animation, which is great, and people have gone on to great things working at Pixar from doing those courses. But the problem, most of the jobs aren't doing feature animation. They're doing like, you know, having to animate 5-6 seconds a day doing kind of preschool TV. So one of the reasons we set up AnimDojo is to give people a real world taste of what those jobs, what you're going to need to go on those jobs, so you don't suddenly land in a studio and then be like, oh my goodness, no, I'm asked to do how much every day because you've been spending 3 months polishing one 5-second shot. And we wanted to make something that was a little bit more aligned to the real world of where the junior level artists are going to go into, rather than, you know, giving them show reels that have been polished to infinity and back.
Yes, indeed. I'm going to ask a question now, which is, you know, has to be said, and that is that the internet was supposed to be the great leveler. It was making skills available to everybody. It would change everything, and yet here we are. We're 5 white males talking about a subject. So what went wrong, and what can we do about it? Who wants to answer that very tricky question? I'm hoping Tom does. Oh, and Hugo first.
I'll be quick. I'll be quick. That was that was my first reaction when you invited me to this panel. I was invited a few days ago, and that I even just spoke with my wife even yesterday about that, and I said, oh, it's a bit weird. We're just like four just white dudes there, you know, a bunch of Brits and a Portuguese guy join and go to a bar. So that is a problem. Yes, it's a huge problem, and I wish there was more inclusion for sure. There are people out there, there's a lot of people out there that I feel like could have been here on this panel, and I not criticizing, but I'm just like saying that there are out there, and I've been on panels like that, and I think we should make a much better effort trying to make sure, you know, I would gladly give my seat for that, you know, because I really think we have a huge problem. And this year we've seen some good events on that, you know, like Bank 2 did a really good event about, you know, about people, like female people coming into the ranks on the industry. Also, just recently, the Foundry did a really good event about minorities working in the industry as well, which was very eye-opening, especially with the fact of racism and a lot of problems that people on that panel talked about that we have been like we don't know about because we can't feel it every day. So definitely the effort should come from us and from these events that are being created, and hopefully we see more of that. So I'll leave it to Tom, because I know Tom wanted to talk as well. So
yeah, no, I think it does need to be addressed by everyone. And I know I think one of the big issues is confidence as well, because I know that Saint did reach out to more people, but no one really wanted to step up and do it, to talk about the subjects. So I feel like it's not, and I think that's one of the biggest problems when it comes to either stepping up to be on a panel, stepping up to become a streamer, stepping up to ask for that pay rise. And I think we're stepping up to ask for that promotion. It's all a lot of the time comes from not feeling like you're that what's the word, what's the complex called? My mind's gone blank now. The
imposter syndrome.
Imposter syndrome, that's the one. There's that imposter syndrome of thinking, oh no, I can't agree to go on a panel to talk about it because I don't have enough to say. But I think people just need to take that confidence and step up, because there's no other way of doing it. Similarly to like I used to I was mortified by a thought of doing public speaking when I entered the industry, but I thought I need to get over this, so agreed to go on panels until I felt comfortable doing it. And I think that if there's one lesson, I know it's easy said than done, but I think, you know, people, you know, if you like doing animation, then do start streaming, because you build that confidence up. And from my own experience, doing a live stream can be a lot more nerve-wracking than doing a talk to a room full of people, because you can see those viewing numbers go up and down. And it's a bit like when those viewing numbers go down, it's a bit like talking to an auditorium that people are walking out of. And it's really, really nerve-wracking. And it does really kind of detract your line of thought when you say something and your viewers drop. You're like, oh my goodness, you get that real feedback. So I think find any way you can to get that confidence, and, you know, try and get out there and do those streams and ask for those things that you don't feel confident enough to ask for. But I think it takes everyone to try and promote that attitude and reach out to people to be inclusive.
Thank you. And Alex, I'll come to you in a second, Peter, but I was just going to mention, Alex, that you mentioned, I think it was, I can't remember the name, Charlotte Gimbard, you mentioned on your blog recently, who set up a interesting channel.
Yeah, she's amazing. I mean, this is where, you know, the thing about, you know, I like Tom's talking about imposter syndrome. I feel like that every day in the classroom, because somebody is always asking me a question I don't know the answer to, right? Every day. And you can't know everything. I mean, you just can't. No matter how long you do this stuff for. And just one of my students is Escape Studios. She's got her own YouTube channel, and she's got, you know, 80,000 subscribers, which is an awful lot more than I've got at mine. And, so apart from just being a bit jealous of what she was doing, I wanted to find out how this was working. And she's making a living from this thing. It's extraordinary. It's just like she's set up her own animation studio at YouTube, producing animation every day. She set it up when she was 15. And this is totally new media stuff, which she just did because she was really passionate about Minecraft, and it's Minecraft animation, but she's monetizing it through video, you know, through advertising at YouTube, and already making a living doing this stuff at YouTube, and doing really well, really impressive. So yes, incredible. New business models being created all the time.
Thanks. I'm just going to cut back to Peter. We're
Yeah, sure.
Almost on the hour, so I'm going to, you know, I'm going to continue, so we won't just cut straight off. But Peter, you know, in terms of what you do, I mean, you're seeing sort of, I take it sort of, you know, young boys and girls sort of, you know, passionately interested in animation, and you know, so those people are coming through. But I wondered why, you know, if you have any sort of commentary on, you know, whether enough people think they can teach, and whether, as Tom was saying, it's a confidence thing, or whether it's some other sort of cultural trait.
So, I mean, what Alex was just saying about one of his students with 80,000 subscribers is something that we do get occasionally as well. We have students turning up who 15 years old with thousands of subscribers, or making thousands of dollars selling models online. You know, thinking, well, I should have spent my summer doing that instead. But you know, it's really exciting. So you've got this new platform, this internet. You know, the availability of the internet, the availability of streaming, the availability of pretty, you know, cheap online storage and online video sharing and so on. But we have to recognize at the same time that this is not available to all. And to get into animation is one of, you know, certainly 3D digital animation is one of the few areas of digital creativity which still requires pretty hefty, you know, computer hardware. So you've got to have a bit of money behind you. You've got to have probably a quiet space to work. And these things are not available to everyone. And on top of that, it's pretty, you know, you need somebody to support you, to, you know, to point you in the right direction, to give you the right advice. And again, that's not something that's available to everyone. So it's, you know, it is a great leveler, but at the same time, the inherent disparities in access and opportunities, which kind of cut across our society, are also very, very visible in the animation industry, I would say.
Yeah, thanks. And you know, that sense of almost digital poverty as well is, you know, is still out there. We all automatically assume, you know, with our sort of bandwidth and our sort of, you know, educational sort of platforms, that, you know, we're sort of we're like everybody else, but people do still have problems of access. We're coming towards the end now, so I have just a couple of questions I'm going to try and sneak in. And one is, you know, how do you keep track of people who come on your courses, or do you, or do they just disappear and then you find out years later that they're doing something? Do you keep the conversation with them going after they've been on a course, or, you know, been involved with what you've been given? How do you keep track of people? Anybody want to answer that? Alex?
Thanks. Yes, and I'll take that one. Yeah, so LinkedIn. I connect to all my students at LinkedIn, and I bother them endlessly about why haven't they updated their profile, why isn't their demo reel linked to LinkedIn, You know, why aren't they showcasing their latest piece of work? Why aren't they saying they're available to work? That's where the recruiters live. They're at LinkedIn, and that's the way to do it. So, and that means I can keep track on them. I can see if they've got a job. I can prod them if they haven't found work yet. So yes, I kind of run an unofficial jobs agency, both for my online folks and also for the students that escaped, to try and help get them in. Because the trouble is, with, you know, students don't apply because they lack confidence. So you've often got to more than nudge. You know, I mean, I can get jobs come in all the time, and I can post a job and say, hey guys, apply for this, but people don't apply. So then you've got to go and find them individually and say, this one's for you. Why haven't you applied yet? And, you know, make them apply. And
so
then you've got a chance. You've got to push. Yeah, you've got to do a lot of that. It's very time consuming. It takes a lot of work, but it's, for many students, it's the only way to do it, because they lack the confidence. They don't realize how good they are.
Anybody else want to talk to that about how you keep track?
Yeah, so I think that's on, like, for example, on AnimDojo, I think that's been one of our biggest mistakes to date, that we haven't really done that. When one of our biggest goals is to help, you know, widen the range of people in different backgrounds coming into the industry. And we haven't really been measuring that. We've been more focused on trying to help immediately. And I think that how can anyone really get better at doing things if they've got no feedback loop? You know, you've got to be able to measure where you're trying to get to. If you're going to get better at it, it's like trying to go on a journey without a sat nav. You're not going to do it. So I think, you know, all courses, or in any shape and size, needs to be able to kind of measure how effective they are in that sense. Otherwise, they're just winging it.
Anybody else? Hugo, you know, do you keep track of people, and do you have sort of friendships or sort of you know, social things beyond, almost like aftercare after you've done something?
Absolutely, I do. Yes, like I follow that. Like I have a very active Discord channel, both the public one on Hugo's desk, but I also have a private one just with my students as well. I have about 600 students at the moment from my online course, and it's pretty active. Obviously, I wish it was more active. I wish it was more, and I completely understand what Alex is coming from. It's the same thing here. Like you cannot convince them sometimes of doing certain things, or they turn back to you and say, "Oh yes, I've sent it to 3 places," and they're like, 3 old places? You sent it to 3 companies? Great. So I think there is a lack of confidence, and you really have to push them for sure. And I think that's the only way, really. And Discord has been for me like a godsend, you know, like and there's others as well. You can use Slack as well, but Discord has been like the main way of really talking to people. In terms of following up with them, I have done that even for years, even on the universities that I usually teach. So even when I was at the mill, I hired a bunch of my students at the mill. I've also hired students of mine on my own company, and I've guided them into other companies. And I think that's the only way. You just have to check on them and see how they are going. And sometimes people fall off the radar, you know. That's why it's so important for you to kind of follow up, because sometimes people lose their confidence and they kind of want to give up, but you know they're talented, and it's a shame that they're going to give up. You know, we see that story all the time, you know, especially now with COVID. People just have an assumption that there's no work, and there is work. It's just that we're working differently now. We're not working the same way. So it's not like you're going to be working in you know, on the office at MPC. You'll probably work somewhere else. And there's so many other companies, you know. I think some of the students keep getting obsessed with ILM, MPC, the mill, frame store, but there are thousands of other companies doing amazing work out there from all aspects of this industry from a creative point of view. Not just the effects, but you have, like, you know, corporate companies, you have like architectural companies, you have animation studios, you have TV shows, there's so much more that you can be doing, and not focusing so much on these big companies. In fact, I think it's actually a quite good career path, going to smaller companies and then kind of grow. And especially if you don't have a lot of confidence, it's actually quite good if you go to a bunch of smaller niche studios and kind of build yourself up and build your show reel. Maybe then you'll be more confident to send it to a big, like to that dream company that you have in mind, you know, because the dream company is going to be there, you know. You just have to like keep going, and maybe in 5 years you can apply to it, you know. So yeah, I guess it falls on us, all of our everyone here on this panel are teachers, and just like Alex is saying, like, just keep poking them and just see if they can get higher than other places, and keep giving them alternatives. That's the thing, because they're not really seeing them. They're basically too closed. They can't really see the whole picture yet.
Yeah, that's really good advice. And in fact, we're coming to the end now. So I'd just like to ask one final question, which is very much about advice and motivation, because, we've all tried learning stuff and fallen by the wayside because it was too difficult or too confusing, or we didn't have time. So what advice would you give people out on the other end of this line? We're assuming lots of people want to get more involved with animation. We're assuming that some of them are students. They may not be students of animation, they may be elsewhere. We're assuming people want to know more about animation in all its forms. What kind of advice would you give these people at the other end of the line to get involved, without marketing yourselves, by the way? So no adverts for yourselves, but what advice would you give? Peter?
Okay, I'll start you off on this. And I know we've not been talking much about software at all, but certainly at the moment, Blender is a wonderful thing to get involved with. Now, Blender is completely free, it's open source, you can download it, and it runs on terrible hardware. So if you've got a rubbish computer at home, Blender will likely run on your computer when maybe some of the other products won't. And it gives you a very similar interface and very similar outputs to what you get with the other software, though they are also available for free if you're studying in many cases.
Yeah, that's a good point. Thank you. Free software is one thing. Tom?
I just wanted to kind of echo that, really. And one of the ways that I've kind of been kept motivated when sometimes it can become really, really hard work and a drag, especially with, second lockdown, in staying kind of motivated, is one of the things I did, is just following different artists to stay inspired. I followed some artists working in Blender, following some of the November challenges, and some of them were so amazing. I then thought, oh my goodness, I want to get involved with this, and then watched a load of kind of tutorials that had been done by people who were using all the crazy node stuff in Blender, and how to go it for myself. So I think it's just a case of staying inspired to remember why you're doing it, and rather doing it for the sake of doing it. And then also, I think staying healthy as well. One of the things I've done when I'm feeling a bit of a dead end is just going for a run, or going out for a walk, getting that fresh air, because it's amazing what that can do for your your body and mind mentally.
Thank you. Alex, what's your advice to people out there who may only just be starting to looking at animation?
Well, I think, there's so much free content out there now. I think you take advantage of that, and just, you just got to apply. Hugo was saying, everyone there, you say, how many of you applied to? 3? Well, no, 300. It's like, you got to cast your, but yeah, it's difficult. People don't apply, they feel bad, they go back to stacking shelves at Sainsbury's or whatever they were doing before. And it's all about having the confidence to actually get out there and apply. But it's difficult. If I cast my mind back to when I was 17, 18, 19, I didn't have a lot of confidence either. So you can't just magic that stuff up. But that's where mentoring and a good tutor and that's where that counts. You just got to push people and understand that they need a push.
Thank you. Hugo, your final piece of advice for those who want to study animation or VFX.
I think I'm not going to repeat, everyone on this panel has made amazing advices, and I echo every single one of you. My final advice might be more to a mental state and a more personal state. I've been approached by a lot of my students and a lot of friends of mine that have kind of found this moment difficult, like with the pandemic and being alone and actually not meeting a lot of people. And it's really important for you to stay healthy, for sure. You need to do exercise. You need to get up if you're a chair. You need to still, I know you can't go to a museum on a lockdown. I know you can't go in a concert on a lockdown, but you can still go to the virtual museums. You can still go to so many websites that have so much content out there. You can still go and watch live streams of shows and be inspired. And people have already said that on this panel, but I think the most important thing is to really reach out if you're feeling depressed, or if you're feeling anxious, or if you're feeling really down, because it's so easy to feel like that on this time because of lockdown and because we're alone. So it's important for you to maybe reach out with some friends, use Skype, use Discord. Almost every application these days have as an audio and webcam thing. There's really no excuse. You can contact someone on Facebook, you can contact someone on FaceTime, on Zoom, on all these things are free, and you can talk to people and your friends, and maybe reach out to your old friends and people that you haven't talked to in a long time. Maybe try to get a schedule where, okay, every week I'm at least going to call a couple of my friends and see how they are doing, so you don't feel so alone. I often do that with my team, because my team is all remote. We've been there before. We've been remote for years. We sometimes leave the Skype on. We sometimes spend hours on Skype chatting and doing other conversations. I know companies have done that as well, where they have Zoom calls where people are not talking about work. They're just talking, chit-chatting about something else. Those things are really important. And if you're feeling down right now, and if you're feeling depressed or feeling overwhelmed by this, reach out to people, even if you don't know them, try. I've been reached out on LinkedIn many times, and I've spoken with a lot of people that have problems and that they are trying to succumb them now. So that would be my advice, on top of all the amazing advice everyone on this panel has given as well.
Yeah, thanks. And it's very sort of good that you mentioned that kind of holistic person approach, as opposed to just thinking about software and skills. And there are sort of places where those kind of conversations can happen. Tom, do you want to talk about or mention Access VFX and some of the things they've done in that respect?
Yeah, I just wanted to give, on a final note as well, to give a shout out to Access VFX, who run a free, fully online mentoring program where they're connecting industry artists from all around the world to up and coming artists, or whatever part of the industry you want to go into, from all around the world. And that is, if you're not feeling confident and you're a bit of an introvert, you don't like to do video chats or meet for awkward coffees, then their mentoring program is run by Prospella, which does everything via just kind of web-based chat systems, whether in Slack or on their own platform. So that's a fantastic way of getting that direct advice from a professional on what you can do to help your career go forward. So I'd recommend going to accessvfx.org and sign up for a mentor there.
Great, thanks. And the last thing I want all of you to do now is just read out very clearly your URL so that everybody remembers who you are. So Peter, what's your URL?
I'm muting myself. So it's 3dami.org. So 3dami.org.
Thank you. Alex?
Mine's www.animationapprentice.org. Animationapprentice.org.
Thank you. Hugo?
Mine is just YouTube. You go to YouTube, just type Hugo's Desk. You'll find it. It's the first result on the top. Fortunately, there's no other Hugo's Desk on YouTube, so that's fine. So just Hugo's Desk, just that.
Okay, so I hope the organisers will forgive us that last bit of product placement, but other sites do exist, and we've all said, do make sure you look around and, before you jump into any kind of training online, especially if it's paid, do search it out and look at recommendations and make sure you know what you're signing up to. So I'd like to thank the whole panel for their wisdom and amazing experience of both teaching, training, but also working in the field. I'd like to thank Alex Williams, Peter Kemp, Hugo Guerra, Tom Box, and all of you. Look forward to seeing you online and looking at some of your material in the very near future. So thanks very much, and goodbye, everybody.
Thank you, Saint.
Thanks.
Thank you so much, Saint.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.
Nice to meet you guys.